Most RIAs we work with are already paying for security tools. But the craziest part is not only are they paying for the tools, they're not even using it. You pay for this giant amount of coverage and enterprise grade security, and it never actually gets implemented. And in today's video, I want to peel that back. What you can expect is Microsoft 365 good, maybe even a touch of email archiving in there as well, and just want to cover exactly what you can expect. And I have an account here that we're actually going to be able to go through. It's a fairly clean account, meaning it's fairly new. There's not a whole lot of crazy security settings because it's not a RIA account. I would never expose any of our clients' information to anyone out there on the internet. How are you doing? My name is Harrison Barron from SecureWealthIT.com. We help financial firms, broker-dealers, RIAs make sure that not only they are compliant, making sure that SEC blue sky regulations are totally fine and you don't have to worry about that, but also making sure that your computers work the way that you want, whether it's onboarding a new employee and setting up that computer and the systems required, or making sure that it just does something simple like print to the right printer or log in when you're supposed to be logged in. All of that good stuff. If you want to learn more about us, you can head over to SecureWealthIT.com. There's a ton of information on our website, who we are, what we do, the problems that we solve, and all that good stuff, as well as resources. We're constantly putting out new resources. If you want to see some resources or new resources, please leave a comment down below or even send us a message on our website. We love working on new stuff, and we're working on constantly new ways to help RIAs and financial advisors just make sure that they're one step ahead, as well as some new blogs that we have recently released. So go check that out, SecureWealthIT.com. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Microsoft 365, specifically Business Premium. Now, believe it or not, most RAs have no idea what this actually means. And I want to just cover a little bit about it. So I'm going to pull up Microsoft here and just kind of show you exactly what you can go through and expect. So inside Microsoft, there are typically 3 tiers for business. Now, us as Microsoft sellers, we have additional tiers that are not really mentioned on here for higher and higher tiers of security. But for the sake of this video, I just want to cover the most important ones, right? So we have Microsoft Business Premium, we have Microsoft Business Standard, and then we have Microsoft Business Basic. Now, Basic is purely an email, and you can see that it'll come with some apps. And in this case, they're pretty much web apps, right? As you can see, web and mobile only, meaning you're not downloading Excel, PowerPoint, any of these, OneNote on your physical computer. Now, if we step it up one more to Microsoft Business Standard, you'll see that you actually get these apps. So it just says PowerPoint, right? OneNote, Excel. It's all pretty simple. And there's some additional ones, right? Microsoft Loop, you have Clipchamp, there's Outlook. I'm sure you're probably familiar with Outlook, Exchange, all that good stuff on there. Now, this is what I would consider the core. Unless there's somebody working completely remotely on a tablet or something like that, that's really where Microsoft Business Basic comes into play. But if they're an employee, you're probably going to have this. But if you are an RIA, you should have specifically Microsoft 365 Business Premium. I don't know why it's not letting me click and highlight that, but Business Premium. And the reason is inside of here, you're going to see a couple different things. You'll have some additional features as well as some integrated, or better yet, enterprise level technology integrated into the core app. And what I mean by that is you're going to see additional apps down here. Microsoft Purview, which is great for email archiving. Now, it can, in many cases, replace something like Smarsh or Global Relay, which are both fantastic tools, specifically geared towards RIAs and financial advisors. However, you're going to get additional things like Microsoft Defender. This is an enterprise-grade cybersecurity tool. They also have Intune. They have Windows 11. You have Microsoft Entra ID, which is something that you would probably never use as well. But these are really the enterprise grade level tools. And the reason I mention that is because this whole video, in order to be compliant, you do need Business Premium because it comes with that Microsoft Exchange, right? For your email, that's protection from spam, from phishing emails. And if it's set up correctly, it works really, really good. Also, it comes with Basic Purview, which is that email retention I mentioned, right? Retention labels, basic DLP policies, and an audit log with 90-day retention built in. Very important I mentioned that because we're going to dive back into that shortly. It also has conditional access and multi-factor authentication through Entra. Basically fancy words to say, hey, it allows us to control who's accessing that platform, when they're accessing it, and verifying who is actually jumping into that platform. It's a lot, don't get me wrong. And these are all words and buzz things that you're probably going crazy over because This is the world that we live in and not the world you live in. But I think it's important to know what you're actually paying for. This is what most advisors are paying for, and they've never turned on a single policy. Think about it this way, right? You get a car, right? Maybe you buy the world's safest car, the Volvo XC90, I think, or something like that. Whatever it is, it's a Volvo, whatever car it is. But in order to get all of the features, right, those cars have to pass safety ratings. And in order for that to pass, they immediately activate all of that. Where in Microsoft, they do the very light basics, but if you want the full features of security, because they understand that everybody is slightly different, they give you the ability to set it up how you want it to be set up. Either massive amounts of security, but the more security is, the more work that you have to do to get the information, or bare minimum, super basic security that comes from the package. And when I say super basic, I mean almost no security at all. But they give you the option to turn that on. That's where a professional comes in. And in most cases, most RIAs are not professionals in setting up what are called policies. Policies are essentially the switches that say, hey, do this, block this email, log these emails for longer than 90 days, right? Out of the box, it's going to log those emails for 90 days, or it's going to do basic levels of cybersecurity. But if you want to turn that knob up a good bit, you can, but you have to then roll out policies. That's where somebody like a MSP, who we are, would come into play. And I'm not saying that to pitch myself, but in most cases, look, you have had gone through school, testing, certifications, continuing education credits, and then you have to find clients on top of that. Setting up your technology is not something you're designed for, and somebody probably, hopefully, gave you the great recommendation to start off with Microsoft Business Premium, but you never went in and set it up the right way. So let's talk about the baseline and where it runs out for RIAs. Regulation SMP requires real incident response procedures. And that's not just antivirus, right? They want to see, hey, if this happens, and this happens. Quite literally, a checklist of things in order that would actually happen. Also, on top of that, the SEC wants to see an audit trail, e-discovery on email, and proof of data loss controls. Those are all parts of the policy. You can't just say, well, we have Business Premium and we have Defender. Well, yes, it can work. It doesn't work the way that you want it to until you adjust all the knobs and switches to get it to the way that you want it to work. Also, on top of that, when I was talking about archiving, now the nice part about Smarsh and Global Relay is they come out of the box knowing that they are working specifically for RIAs, right? And it talks about it, right? Mid-sized firms, enterprise partners, right? Industries, financial services, and public sector. So when you work with a company like Smarsh, or you go through somebody like us to work with Smarsh, it immediately comes set up and they know, hey, they need emails for up to potentially 7 years. It's a massive difference. Now, I'm not saying that Purview can't do that. And I'll show you guys a little bit about Purview right back here. You can go through and your posture score needs to improve. And these are all things that you're going to go through and play around with. And like I said, it's a fairly fresh account. I fired it up just for this video. You have a knowledge center, but you're probably not going in here. Right? Inside of your Microsoft account, you're going to see a ton of information on the left-hand side. You'll get a bunch of information, health reports, setup, support, all that kind of stuff. Microsoft Purview, Microsoft Intune, Identity, Azure, Exchange, all of these fancy buzzwords. But if they're not set up correctly, they don't actually work. Purview keeps 90 days worth of logs by default. But anything more than that, you have to go in and actually modify it. And unfortunately, an exam is going to make you go back way further than that. Also, on top of that, you have to have some kind of risk management in place, right? If there's no communication compliance, this is really important because RIAs need that once again for regulation SMP. So you need risk management, you need communication archiving, and that communication also has to be in compliance. It has to be encrypted and safe and secure, so that way it mitigates the most amount of things possible. And look, at the end of the day, nobody wants a breach. Even though I've made videos about what a breach would actually be like, at the end of the day, none of us actually wants that. On top of that, I mentioned Microsoft Defender. You probably already pay for that as well. And by probably, I mean if you have Microsoft Business Premium, you pay for that tool. It's this little shield right here. Very creative, a shield for defense, right? But Defender is for endpoints, and an endpoint is the computer that you're actually using. The thing is you have to set it up the right way. At the basic part of it, right? It's just a little bit of a block, right? Hey, we need to block something. But when it's actually used the right way, and just by buying it, it doesn't mean it's actually on your computer. There's a bit of an install process there. You can fortify that more and more and more. And believe it or not, Microsoft Defender is one of the better tools. Is it the best tool? Best is subjective, but is one of the better tools actually out there. And Microsoft 365 makes it fairly easy to do a lot of these things. However, they have to be set up correctly, right? Defender can catch attackers way before they hit. It's constantly being updated by a billion, probably $1 trillion company at this point, right? And it works inside of your network and it helps prevent the breach, not just making sure that, hey, we have this tool and it's there. It can truly help prevent the breach and it can help remediate that breach as well. It can only help. It won't solve the entire thing. It is just a part. It is a small piece in a large process. And if you want to see Microsoft Defender, I've also pulled that up as well. You can go through here, get your SIEM. These are all fancy words that we use in our world. Your optimization data, right? Once again, a pretty clean account in here. Secure score, right? Identity, data, apps, all that good stuff as well. Device health. And you can set this up the right way so an admin would be able to see this information, right? Pending actions, right? Threats that were there, whether or not they're good, they're bad, the level of that threat, the level of exposure. These are all things that somebody who's into cybersecurity would actually want to see. But the catch is, if you don't actually set it up like this one, once again, a temporary account, you will see an immediate shift in that. It has to be done the right way. And also risk-based things. Now, I didn't talk about this one all that much, but Entra ID. It's a fancy way of saying, hey, a smart IT person is going to take care of a whole system, right? You can do what is called risk-based conditional access. So you can set it up where, hey, if this person is maybe a secretary, they have way less access to the back end of the system than the business owner, a C-suite, or even an upper management person has. It allows for that control, that conditional control, to make sure things don't just get out of place and super crazy. But that's the nice part of what you're actually paying for. So what does Purview actually do and how do these things work? Because I think a lot of people get this wrong. Purview will actually help you with full DLP access across emails, Teams, and files, not just basic rules. That's a fancy way of saying, hey, it's going to help you with the amount of access that your entire team gets with email, Microsoft Teams, and all the files that you're actually using it for. It also has e-discovery premium for legal holds and investments, which is quite nice, or investigations, I should say. That is another huge win right there. And I know that might not sound like a lot of things, but Purview is a fantastic way to actually log emails and build that audit trail that auditors and examiners are going to want to see. And heck, just because you're not SEC compliant today, or you're working with blue sky laws because you're not a part of the SEC, they will go back as far as they possibly can to see that information. So starting as early as possible, and hey, you might have to fall on the sword and say, we caught it, we made the shift and adjusted it. They will love you for that, because the SEC gets really mad at not people that didn't follow the rules, at people that followed the rules, realized they were not following the rules, and then proceeded to continuously not follow the rules. They understand that we are human and that things are going to happen. They want to see that you actually work towards doing the right thing. And if you realize, hey, before this date, we weren't compliant, we became compliant on this date, but we still have all these emails, or we lost some emails because they weren't archived correctly, but we started archiving emails here, they will almost certainly forgive you on that. Can't guarantee, it depends on who the examiner is, but they will almost certainly forgive you for that because you're making strides into doing the right thing. Audit logs are super important. And the longer the audit log, the better, because they want it for forensic details when they actually go back and look at everything. That is the key with all of this. And there's a lot of other jargon and tech stuff that I could talk about here, but I don't want to bore you with the boring stuff, because if you're not in this every day, it can be a slug. But I do want to leave you with this. If you're paying for Microsoft 365 Business Premium, you have to make sure that you're using the features that you actually need. There are other ways and other tools, like I mentioned, with just simply Smarsh and Global Relay for logging and archiving data, which is fantastic. However, there are still plenty of other tools and features that you can turn on that'll give you the peace at night that you can go to bed saying, hey, I know that we're doing the right thing. Our policies are set up correctly. Our whole world in technology is set up on policies and the bare components, because you have to turn on all those switches to make sure that the security is there, the archiving is there, and everything in between. And that is done by either a professional or you, if you want to spend the time and energy and effort it takes to set up the policies inside of here. But I promise you, it works really, really well. And I think a lot of RAs aren't exactly sure what to get, or they've got something, but they don't know what they have, or if it's even being used correctly. And 9 times out of 10, at least the RAs that we've worked with, a lot of them have business premium, but have never touched the security stuff in the back end. And if you're curious or you're not sure if you want to have that conversation, feel free to reach out to us at securewealthit.com. We are happy to assist. Happy email archiving and Microsoft Business 365 enjoying, I hope. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.